The year is 2007, 2008. Around this time in my life, I happened to have depression. From this depression, after having it for like 3 months, I woke up really spiritual, seeking for answers. As I was seeking for answers, I wanted to study spirituality, but I did not want to study Catholicism. I didn't want to be Catholic because I was born Catholic, but that didn't work for me. So I started studying all the religions. I studied all the religions for 6 months. The last one that I found was Buddhism, which was the one that I ended up going in alignment with what I want to achieve. As I was searching for Buddhism, how to learn about it, how to implement it in my life, how can I still have a simple life the way I live and still practice spirituality. And it was during this search that I became across the work of David Hawkins that teaches enlightenment. As I kept seeking, then I heard about Deepak Chopra. I happened to attend one of his lectures and I was mesmerized by his presence. And in 2007, he wrote a book about the Buddha. This is the story of the Buddha and how he reached enlightenment. Hello, my name is Willie. Thank you all for watching these lectures, all these videos that I'm making. I share all this work for anyone that can find any help while they are seeking answers in their spiritual path. I hope that these podcasts can help anyone find answers, or also if you can read the books on which I'm making the videos, it would help you immensely. Just sharing the path of how I did it. Not that I'm there yet, I'm inclined to become a better version of my own self. I know where I would like to be. Thank you all for watching the video. I'm grateful that I have the channel. I'm grateful that I can share this type of work for everyone to help themselves, but also to help others in this path of enlightenment or overcoming their insecurities. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.
All right, so imagine, right, a young prince born into like the most incredible comfort, and his father, this super powerful king, he's just come back from a big military campaign. You can still kind of feel the echoes of the conflict, and during all of this, his mother's on this journey, pregnant, about to give birth, but not in some fancy palace. No, out in a forest grove.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of wild, right? And to top it off, you've got these astrologers saying this kid, this prince, is destined for like extraordinary things. He's going to be either a super powerful king or a like deeply spiritual leader. Talk about pressure, right? And we're talking about Siddhartha. His name actually means, get this, he who has attained all desires. Pretty heavy stuff, huh?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's a lot to unpack for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And that's really the heart of what we're going to dive into today. You know, we're going to trace those first steps, the really crucial experiences that led him to question his like crazy privileged world, and then, well, ultimately forge that path that became the foundation of Buddhist teachings.
Right.
So we've got all these accounts of his childhood, his interactions with, you know, the people closest to him, and those first peaks beyond the palace walls that really started to change his whole perspective.
Yeah, and I think for you, the learner, understanding these really fundamental moments, it's like you get this unique view into how this huge spiritual and philosophical tradition came to be.
Totally, yeah.
You know, it's about seeing how one person's journey wrestled with like these basic questions about what it means to be human.
Yeah.
Questions that honestly we're still grappling with today, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So basically our journey together, our deep dive, is going to follow this path, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to start with Siddhartha's upbringing. It was like shockingly sheltered, and we'll see those first hints of his like questioning nature. You know, he was a curious kid. Then we're going to look at the stuff that started to show him how complex the world was outside the palace walls, and the struggles, the big questions that started popping up in his head. And finally, we'll look at those first big steps he took toward, well, basically giving up all that privilege.
Yeah, it's fascinating how those early experiences really molded what would come later. It all kind of ties together, doesn't it?
It really does, yeah. And you know, King Suddhodana, his efforts to like protect his son,
Oh yeah.
they were pretty extreme.
Oh, absolutely. Driven by those predictions, it's like he built a golden cage, you know, a world of just like endless comfort and entertainment, all designed to keep Siddhartha away from, well, anything even remotely unpleasant or painful.
Wow.
It's intense, right? What do you think that level of like protection tells us about what the king was hoping for, or maybe even afraid of?
Well, I think it shows how badly he wanted his son to follow a specific path, right?
Yeah.
Worldly power, continuing his legacy. But I also think it hints at this fear of the other prophecy, the spiritual one. Like, he was scared of losing his son to something bigger than himself, something he couldn't control. It's almost like he's trying to manipulate fate by controlling Siddhartha's entire world.
Exactly. And get this, right in the middle of this, like super carefully crafted reality, Siddhartha starts showing this natural curiosity.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
It's like his mind's already looking for something deeper. And there's this story, right? It's about him watching a soldier ant, just struggling like crazy to carry a dead termite up a pebble. What do you think a little kid noticing that? What could it mean?
That's an interesting one. I guess it could suggest like a fascination with effort, with struggle,
Nowadays.
which is like the total opposite of his own life, right? Like, everything's just handed to him. Maybe it's like this early realization that challenges exist even in the tiniest lives.
Yeah.
In reality, his privilege couldn't completely hide from him.
That's a really good point. It's like this tiny crack in the illusion of this perfect, painless world.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you've got these key figures from his childhood, right? Like Prajapati, his aunt and stepmother.
Yeah.
He used to, have these playful chases. But even when they were just playing, Siddhartha was like unusually deliberate.
Yeah.
Almost impossible to catch. What do you make of that?
I don't know, maybe it shows this like innate sense of focus.
Yeah.
Or a mind that was already like watching, strategizing, even when he was just a kid playing games. It wasn't just about the game itself, There was something deeper going on, like he was studying the whole dynamic.
Interesting, yeah. And then there's Chana.
Yeah.
His stable boy companion. He came from a much more like down-to-earth background.
Right.
So their bond probably gave Siddhartha a totally different view of the world. Remember that ant story?
Yeah.
Siddhartha's thinking about like the ant's persistence, but Chana's reaction is totally different.
Oh yeah, he's like, just squash it and let's play a different game.
Exactly.
He's so practical.
It really highlights the difference between Siddhartha's contemplative nature and, the everyday worries of the normal world. Totally.
It's like his first exposure to a whole different way of seeing things.
Exactly. Chana represents all those everyday realities that Siddhartha was sheltered from. His down-to-earth perspective would have, subtly shown how artificial palace life was. Don't you think?
I think so, yeah, for sure.
And then, we can't forget Devadatta, his cousin.
Oh, yeah.
Their relationship was kind of messed up right from the start. Remember that story where Devadatta put a rock in the powder they were playing with?
Ugh.
And
Yeah.
Siddhartha, he'd never even seen his own blood before.
It's crazy how sheltered he was.
It really is. And Devadatta's, his action, it shows this competitive side, maybe even some jealousy. It creates this early contrast and maybe hints at some future problems,
Yeah, I can see that.
So even in the luxury of the palace, these little things, the ant, the games, Chana, Devadatta, it's like they're planting these seeds of doubt in Siddhartha's mind.
Right, they're making him question things.
Yeah, exactly. And, Suddhodana wanted to protect him, but that protection may have actually made him more curious about what was outside those walls, made him want to understand the real world, not just the one his dad built for him.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, those doubts really start to grow with some key moments like that time with the injured horse in the stables.
Yeah, that's a powerful one.
Just hearing that cry of pain really affected him. And it's in that moment of fear and empathy that he has this brief experience with Mara, this feeling of unease, of internal conflict. What's your take on that early appearance?
Well, seeing that injured horse was such a harsh intrusion of suffering into his perfect little world. The pain, the vulnerability of the animal, it wasn't something he could just ignore. And that quick glimpse of Mara, even if we just see it as his inner turmoil starting to bubble up, it represents the challenges, the obstacles that come with any kind of deep self-discovery.
Then you've got Asita, the hermit, showing up. His predictions about Siddhartha's future are so important, highlighting the tension between worldly power and spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
And him telling the young prince to find silence and inner peace under the rose apple tree, That feels like a major turning point.
It really is. Asita's visit is like this huge catalyst. He doesn't just confirm the astrologer's predictions, but he actually lays out the alternative, the path of spiritual realization. And him teaching Siddhartha how to find inner peace is like the exact opposite of all the external stuff and sensory overload of the palace.
Yeah.
It's maybe the first time Siddhartha gets a look at a different kind of fulfillment. What struck you about that meeting?
Well, I think it's amazing that even as a kid, he's given these two totally different possibilities for his life.
Right.
It wasn't just, oh, you're going to be king, end of story.
Yeah.
There was this whole other deeper potential being offered to him.
Right.
And the fact that he actually went and sat under that tree looking for that silence, it tells you he was already drawn to that inner world.
Exactly. And these internal questions, they keep coming up. Even in the mock battles where he's clearly skilled, there's this sense of discomfort with the violence. Remember when he tries to break up a fight between Devadatta and Channa?
Oh yeah, he's not into it.
It shows this fundamental unease with aggression.
Like, he can fight, he can handle conflict, but it's not something he actually wants.
Right, it's like he's playing the part, doing what's expected, but inside, he's already moving in a different direction.
Yeah, I get that. And then his dad, Suddhodana, keeps trying to tie him to the material world. He sets up these really carefully planned exposures to pleasure, like that gathering with Sujata. That's where Siddhartha starts to experience beauty and attraction. Kumbhira even notices this new awareness.
Yeah.
It's all part of the king's plan to keep his son interested in earthly desires.
It's such a deliberate attempt to immerse him in the sensory world, hoping it'll distract him from any thoughts of giving it all up.
Yeah.
But it seems like it might just highlighted how shallow that world actually was for Siddhartha, like creating more questions than answers.
For sure. And then it all leads to this huge feast to celebrate Siddhartha's coming of age.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not just a party, right? It's this big political move by his dad, a show of force meant to pass on all his power and authority to his son. He's basically setting Siddhartha up to become a warrior king.
That's a lot of pressure.
It's a ton of pressure. His dad is basically saying, this is your fate, this power is yours. But Siddhartha is clearly struggling with it all. He's seeing all this wealth, all this influence, and it's just not clicking with him. So what's the main point here?
Well, I think it's that despite everything Suddhodana planned, those seeds of doubt planted by Asita and Siddhartha's own growing awareness, they're taking root. The feast was supposed to solidify his worldly future, but it might have just shown him how empty that path was.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And that brings us to his growing need to understand those moments of realization and, well, ultimately, him leaving. Even when he wins the archery contest, he's super bothered by accidentally injuring someone.
Oh, yeah, it shows how sensitive he is to suffering.
Yeah, that's a big part of who he is.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole pre-wedding thing with Yashodhara. It's interesting because it seems like she understands his deeper desires.
Yeah, the texts mention her sadness about his eventual departure.
Right, like there's this unspoken understanding between them.
It's like she intuitively gets that his heart isn't fully in the whole royal life thing.
And then, boom, the big moment. He leaves the palace in secret with Channa and Konthaka. He has this overwhelming need to see and understand the world outside the bubble his dad created.
Yeah, that's a major turning point. It's like he's consciously rejecting a life of privilege and choosing to find his own answers.
And what he sees outside the palace walls is the total opposite of everything he's ever known. The realities of getting old, getting sick, and dying in the village nearby, it hits him hard. Channa tries to protect him, but it's too late. And then seeing a dead body in the house of the dead, that must have been a life-changing experience.
Absolutely. It's like those encounters are what finally push him to give up his old life.
Yeah.
For the first time, he's facing these universal human experiences of suffering and death, things he was completely sheltered from. It shatters the illusion that the palace represented, that everything is perfect and happy forever.
It makes him realize that human life is fragile.
Exactly. It's those raw, unavoidable encounters with suffering that drive his search for understanding, that ultimately lead him to leave his royal life and start his spiritual journey.
Right. So he leaves the palace, and he starts dedicating himself to finding knowledge and understanding. He goes to all these different spiritual teachers and tries out different practices. He spends time with a hermit in a cave, hangs out with woodcutters, and even pushes his physical limits with these intense ascetic practices.
It's like he's exploring all these different paths, desperately looking for the answer to the suffering he's seen.
Yeah.
He even tries extreme self-denial, but eventually realizes that's not going to give him the answers he needs.
And his time with teachers like Ganaka, Alara Kalama, and Udaka Ramaputta, those are important too, right?
Oh, definitely. He learns from them, but ultimately finds their teachings lacking. It shows how determined he is to find his own way to liberation, even if it means breaking away from what everyone else believes.
And then, under the Bodhi tree, it happens. He reaches enlightenment. He faces Mara, who represents all his inner demons and temptations, desire, doubt, clinging to the self. And he overcomes them through this incredible detachment. He becomes the Buddha.
That moment under the Bodhi tree is like the peak of his whole spiritual journey.
Yeah.
Facing Mara is like conquering all his inner blocks and attachments. It's a complete understanding of suffering and how to be free from it.
And even in this like super profound moment of awakening, his first thoughts are about compassion. He comforts a grieving woman, and then there's that powerful story of Angulimala, the killer. The Buddha transforms him not with force, but with compassion and understanding.
It's a great example of how anyone can change.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then he goes back to his 5 former companions, the ascetics, and gives his first sermon. He introduces this idea of the false self, this idea that the way we see ourselves as separate and fixed, it's actually an illusion that causes suffering. And he talks about the path to liberation. It's like he's starting to put his groundbreaking understanding into words.
That first sermon lays the foundation for all of Buddhist philosophy.
Yeah.
The idea of anatta, no self or not self, and the understanding that everything is connected, those are key parts of his teachings.
Totally.
It's a completely new way of thinking about reality and what causes suffering.
And he even goes back to Kapilavastu, to his family and his old life.
It's a powerful moment.
It really is. He sees Yashodhara, makes peace with his dad, and even resolves things with Devadatta. It's like he's bringing his new understanding back to the world he left behind.
His return to Kapilavastu shows how his enlightenment changed not just him, but everyone around him. Is proof that peace and understanding are possible, even with all the complications of past relationships and expectations.
It all comes down to the core of Buddha's teachings, right? Understanding suffering, the path to liberation through personal transformation, nirvana, and rejecting rigid rules and external authority.
Exactly. It's all about individual awakening and understanding.
Exactly. And his teachings were revolutionary because they emphasized personal experience, inner transformation, and the idea that anyone can achieve liberation. He shifted the focus from rituals and divine intervention to individual effort and directly understanding reality.
So the learner, what are the big takeaways from Siddhartha's incredible journey? What do we learn?
Well, the central themes are about questioning what we think we know, facing the reality of suffering, searching for understanding beyond conventional wisdom, and ultimately realizing that enlightenment comes from hard work and looking inward, not relying on outside forces. It shows how radical his teachings were, emphasizing personal responsibility and the possibility of overcoming the illusion of a separate self.
And for me, the most striking thing is the contrast between Siddhartha's super privileged life and how deeply affected he was by seeing ordinary people suffer. His enlightenment didn't come from escaping the world, but from really engaging with it honestly and fully. That's so important. His privileged background actually emphasizes that suffering is universal. Even though he had everything, he felt this emptiness, this unease that money and power couldn't fix. His enlightenment came from his deep empathy for the human condition.
So how does this ancient story apply to us today in our modern world as we try to learn and understand things?
Siddhartha's journey and his teachings are still incredibly relevant. The ideas of questioning what we believe, looking for truth beyond the surface, and understanding suffering are timeless tools for navigating the complexities of life. His emphasis on inner work and taking responsibility gives us a powerful way to deal with the challenges we face.
That's a really powerful connection. So here's something to think about. If the idea of a fixed, separate self is really an illusion that causes suffering, like the Buddha taught, what does that mean for us? What possibilities does it open up for personal change, for more compassion, and for a deeper understanding of what it means to be human?
It's a really profound concept to consider. Exploring Buddhist philosophy further can give us amazing insights into consciousness, the roots of suffering, and the potential for liberation that's within each of us. It's a journey of self-discovery that continues to offer wisdom across cultures and time.
It really is.